Hey, welcome. The Port of Corpus Christi, one of the coastal bend's biggest economic engines, and what they do tends to ripple not only across South Texas, but in some cases across the entire world. And I am pleased to be joined today by Kent Britton, who is the CEO of the port. You've actually been at the port since, what, 2017?
I have.
In the last 2 years as the CEO?
Just over 2 years now, Mike.
Just over 2 years. Yeah, okay, I remember it.
I was CFO prior to that and actually came in as the Director of Finance, kind of in a succession plan for the existing CFO, which was Dennis DeVries.
Yeah, okay, so you have been here for a while.
I have.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk with us, and we also appreciate the opportunity to have an extended conversation with you about some of the items that are important to the Port of Corpus Christi, and because of that, important to the folks here in Corpus Christi. So let me start by asking you to explain something for folks who may not have caught on yet, and this is just in big general terms. Why is our port so important to the country? Because I don't know that everybody realizes that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when I go out and talk, even here locally, how few people truly realize the impact we have, not just on national dynamics, politics, security, national security really, by supplying our partners and allies around the world. But we move 60% of the crude oil that's exported out of the U.S. out of this single port. So 2.5 million barrels of oil a day flows out of this port going to our trading partners overseas. And so we carry quite a bit of national importance, not just by helping those folks keep the lights on, but also in reducing the trade deficit, which is created when we import a lot of goods in containers from other countries.
Well, and that was the ripple effect I was talking about that's felt around the world from Corpus Christi.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so important about this. A lot of folks, as you alluded to, may not understand your work, but I can tell you we are all fascinated by what goes on at the Port of Corpus Christi.
As am I.
Well, here's the deal. You have just, in fact, I think it kicked off yesterday, or Wednesday, for those of you, I don't know when you're watching this, but you have just started an initiative to give folks a peek into what goes on in that still fairly new building over by the Ortiz Center.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so it ties together a couple of things. One, we want people to know more about what we do. Folks who understand what we do can make their own decisions on whether they're supportive or not. But it also ties into kind of a push I've made toward more transparency the last couple of years. And so we're once a month, and you sign up on our website. So you go to portofcc.com. Works just fine, and it's right there on the front page. So once a month, we'll be taking folks through our executive administration building. We've got a big, large-scale map on the floor in there that we just had recently installed, where you can get an aerial view of the port and what goes on there. We've got some historical artifacts from what we do. There's a presentation on what we do, and then people can just ask questions and go out by the water side, take a look. You'll see dolphins more than likely swimming around the ship channel. Hopefully you'll see a ship going by. It's pretty cool. But it's really part of the overall push toward more transparency that I've been trying to push towards. So we have our check register online, for example. We have all our financials online. You can request information from us. We're a public agency, and so there's a public information request page on our website, and you can not only ask what you want, the information you want to get from us, but see what anyone else has requested in the past and see the results of those queries. We recently did a big lease for a potential desalination plant on Harbor Island with Nueces River Authority. We posted that lease on our website. So the tours are just kind of just one more step in just how we're trying to interact with the public.
Yeah, and transparency being the key word there, and that's what a lot of folks are looking for. I mean, I have noticed that you have less of a problem with the general public if you're making the attempt to be transparent than if they feel like you're hiding something. Because even if you're not hiding something, you still look suspicious, right?
We agree.
Well, let me ask you about this then. I know that the port has been very big on building a workforce from the next generation. In other words, raising up our own people to stay here and take some of those jobs at the port. A couple of initiatives that you guys have, one would be the Adopt-a-Schools program. Tell me about that.
Sure. So we have a strong commitment to education and to keeping the folks who are growing up here in the coastal bend gainfully employed here in the coastal bend when they get older. And maybe that's generous on our part, but that's also a little self-serving on our part, right? We want those folks to come work for us. We have and so I'm gonna work backward a little bit. We have a very strong internship program, mostly college students, but we actually have had a couple of high school students the last couple of years. Also, where you can actually come in and work for 3 or 4 months at the port. And we've hired 20 of those folks over the last 4 years into permanent jobs. So that's kind of a feeder into us. And then you back up from there, and we have a couple of endowed scholarships that we're working on, one with A&M Corpus Christi, one with Del Mar. And then you back up from that and you go back to primary education. And so yes, we have really 10 adopt-a-schools, and so they rotate every 2 years. We pick those. We had 65 applications this most recent time. Manger Elementary is a forever school, so that's kind of a longtime partner, and they stay in the adopt-a-school program continually, but the other 9 will be new for next year. They get $10,000 of financial assistance each year for 2 years as part of that. And then they also get a lot of volunteer time from our folks who love going over and helping out at the schools. We also gave 2 large grants, which we just awarded and commissioned on Tuesday, actually. And so we got to...
You say large. Talk about that number.
Yeah, so like I said, the adopt-a-schools get $10,000 a year for 2 consecutive years, plus volunteer time. The 2 large grants were $100,000 each. And it came up last year through a local philanthropist who was asking for some help, but was too late to get into the adopt-a-school program, but had a fantastic program that we were interested in. And so Rosaura Bailey, who is our Director of Community Relations, and myself just kind of thought through this, and we're like, you know, we give these adopt-a-schools this, but what if we did 1 large grant every year? This year we actually had 2 programs that we couldn't really differentiate between. So Solomon Coles High School and Education Center is creating a digital learning center. They'll have, you know, computer labs and other things that will help that. And then Flower Bluff High School is creating a maritime program, which directly impacts the port and the stakeholders within the port who work in the maritime industry. We thought they were both very deserving, and so we granted each of them $100,000 for those programs.
Yeah, and that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's a lot of money that goes a long way toward them. For example, I know looking at Solomon Coles, developing technology that maybe it would have taken them a while to get to, which only helps the port.
That's right.
You know?
Absolutely. No, all of that is good for our community and ultimately will be good for the port.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're blessed. The Texas Water Code, which we operate under, allows us to set aside a certain portion of our revenue to be used for promotion and development of the port. And so that's what this is, the P&D fund is what we call it. A lot of that money goes to the local economic development corporations, the Chamber of Commerce, South Texas Military Task Force, all of the regional chambers of commerce around the area. But then you can set aside a certain amount of that bucket, and we do, to go into grants for community programs that just make this a better place to live.
Yeah, and those recipients are so appreciative of that. I want to get to the most recent Port Commission meeting that happened earlier this week, because I know some items came out of there that really caught my interest, and I thought maybe we could talk about. Before we do that, though, just again for our viewers, help us understand the size and the scope of the Port Commission, the commissioners. What do they do? I mean, how many of them are there? What do they do? Because again, I think that's a group that a lot of folks, you know, may not know a lot about.
Sure. So there are 7 folks. They're appointed by 3 different bodies. So 3 of them by the city of Corpus Christi, 3 by Nueces County, 1 by San Patricio County. They're generally local leaders with a wide breadth of knowledge. It's usually not in maritime. It's actually usually in other businesses, which gives us a well-rounded group. And they set the policy and direction for the port. They then rely on staff. I'm their only employee, right? The other employees work for me, but I work directly for the commissioners. And so they set the direction that then me and my staff go execute on.
Yeah. And they meet usually once a month. Is that meeting open to the public?
It is. So it's the 3rd Tuesday of every month. It's normally at the Ortiz Center, which right now is undergoing a full renovation. So likely won't be open again until January of next year. But right now, we're having those meetings at the RTA building. And yeah, the public is absolutely welcome. There's an opportunity at the beginning for the public to make comments about anything that's on the agenda or anything else. We're happy to hear those. It sometimes gives us information that we weren't aware of previously. And yeah, we go in there and by law, everything over $100,000 has to be approved by the commission. So I can approve up to $100,000, but beyond that, then the commissioners get involved. We give a briefing on those items. We post supporting documentation on those items. You can find that on the website 3 business days prior to the commission meeting, with a memo, a map of where the location of where the project is, and kind of a write-up of what it is. And if it was competitively bid, which since we're a governmental agency, most things have to be, the bid sheet's in there as well, telling what the different bids were, and you can see why we selected who we selected. So yeah. It's a fascinating process. You get to come in and kind of watch the sausage being made a little bit. Some folks like that, some folks don't. Yeah. And we only do it once a month. And they're run very efficiently. We were in and out of there in less than 2 hours this month, and still got some really big things done.
And for folks who are interested, if you haven't looked at the website and looked at the agenda, I mean, he's absolutely right. You can click on the agenda, but then there are other links you can click on that show you kind of what's behind each of the agenda items. Now, if I'm remembering right, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong here, there is going to be a change on the Port Commission mandated by the rules of how long you can serve when it comes to the chair. Is that coming up soon?
So our commissioners can serve 4 full 3-year terms. And so David Engel, who's our chair, and he's an appointee from the city, is in his 12th year. So he is at the end of his 4th 3-year term. And so he will roll off in December, and the city will have to appoint a replacement. Then the commissioners amongst themselves elect the officers. So,
and that's what I was going to ask. So that there's not a natural line of succession. They go through a process of saying who's going to be our chair for this time around. Every year they do that. Okay, so we'll look forward to seeing how that all works out as we get toward the end of the year here.
Me too.
I bet you will. I bet you will. Let me ask you something about the environment, because I know that's always a concern in the work that you do and in the things that the port undertakes. If you had to kind of pinpoint and say, this is really the biggest challenge we have environmentally, is there something that maybe you would land on that you say we're always working on here?
Sure. Air emissions are always going to be at the top of the list for this region. The federal government controls those standards. They have ratcheted those standards down consistently. We helped create the Coastal Bend Air Quality Partnership, which is now an independent organization that kind of helps educate, monitor, come up with creative solutions on how we can do better on that. The port itself is not a regulatory agency, and our emissions, we don't operate anything. We're a landlord port, not really an operating port, and so our emissions come solely from, a couple of generators that might have to run, and then mobile equipment that moves around the port. And so our emissions are a really small portion of what goes on in this entire airshed, but we help keep that at the forefront for everybody, because once you get out of what's known as attainment, so once you cross that threshold that the EPA has set, there are far more things that companies who want to locate here or are already operating here have to do to comply with those regulations. It's truly very expensive once you get out of air attainment.
And I know that you want to make it as easy as possible while staying within the rules and the guidelines. You want to make it as easy as possible for businesses to say, doing business at the port is really going to be best for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we take a lot of pride in the environment that we work in. We are an oil and gas port, which is notoriously one of the dirtiest to operate. And that industry over the last 4 decades has, cleaned up their act, right? And so if you go and you look in our ship channel, you will see a waterway that is teeming with fish and jellyfish, so I wouldn't recommend jumping in there, and dolphins, in some days actually putting on a show. They love the wakes from the ships, so they will get out in front. You can see the dorsal fin racing across from Cargo Dock 9 to get in front of a ship that's exiting, and then they'll just ride that ship.
Yeah, and
ship's
seeing all of that from your building is fascinating too. It's a great vantage point.
It never ceases to amaze me. I never get tired of what we're doing over there.
Yeah. Let's shift to financials for a moment, because I think your second quarter financials just came out, and folks here are always interested in the economy and things like that, especially when there's uncertainty surrounding the economy. So give us a picture of the financial health of the port. What are we seeing?
Sure. So we think it's important for the port to remain financially healthy because we don't tax. We have taxing authority just like every other port in the state of Texas. We are a governmental entity, so we could be taxing. We don't. We are in a envious position among ports in Texas in that we own the submerged land, and so because of that, we are able to then assess fees to our users when they load products on and off of ships. That's how we make our money. And so all of that money, there are no shareholders behind the scenes. None of this goes back to the state government or to our appointing bodies. That money just gets put back into infrastructure in this region and keeps this port thriving, makes it easier to do business for our existing customers and for customers that we might attract. Second quarter was really good. It was the first time in the port's history that our customers have moved more than 100 million tons through the waterway. So just for comparison, for 40 years, this port moved kind of between 75 and 85 million tons a year. We moved 100 million tons in the first half of this year. So we'll be more than likely over 200 million tons again. We do 206 million tons last year, which was the first time over 200 million tons in a year. So we have almost effectively tripled the throughput of this waterway in the last 10 years.
Which should say to folks that growth continues to be an environment there at the port. I mean,
absolutely.
You didn't attain it, and now we're all looking back and celebrating. You're still going.
Absolutely. We're not going to slow down, and we do want to diversify the cargoes that come into the port. We are 90% roughly liquid energy, so crude oil, refined products, and liquefied natural gas being the dominant players in that category. There are 25 different types of liquid refined products that the refiners make here. But those three categories really, where you lump a lot of things into the refined category, but then liquefied natural gas from the Cheniere plant out on the La Quinta Channel being the third biggest commodity we move. They make up 90% of what we do here. Will it be like that will it be like that forever? That's anybody's guess, right? We want to try to set this port up for success for the next 100 years. We started moving cargo in 1926, so next year will be the 100-year anniversary of that. And what are we going to be, 50 years from now if there is a different energy source? I feel very confident. The world has always demanded energy. Texas has always stepped up and produced that energy, and I think this port will continue to export that energy no matter what it is.
Well, and it speaks to a part of your role is to always be looking ahead too.
Absolutely.
Where are we going? I can't be satisfied with what are we doing today. I got to know where we're going.
Well, and that's a tough. So I'll tell you a couple of that is a tough thing to have to do, because a lot of the energy that's been successful in the last decade or 15 years has gotten its start because of government subsidies, and so those obviously change with the changing of administrations. And so you saw the last administration really want to get into hydrogen and ammonia production because other parts of the world, particularly Asia, were demanding hydrogen and ammonia. But it's not competitive with natural gas or other crude oil derived products. And so government is going to have to prop that up for a while until industry, which is very good at innovation, figures out how to drive those costs down. And so the new administration came in, that's not their focus. And so you're not going to see those subsidies anymore. So that new energy supply is kind of on hold in the U.S. Big companies who don't need government subsidies, they're going to continue to do it. You're going to see your really big players still do hydrogen and ammonia and kind of figure out whether there's a supply-demand tie up there on the world stage or not. And then we'll keep looking for all the other stuff too.
You mentioned earlier the Nueces River Authority, so I'm going to have to ask about that.
Sure.
They have been in the news recently with the proposed desal plant they want to put out at Harbor Island, and they're trying to get customers for that. Through the years, and again, help me here if I'm wrong, but I think the port has been on record as saying if we're going to do desal here in the area, we think Harbor Island may be the place to do that. What's the role that you guys are playing right now with the NRA and desal?
Sure, and I'll caveat your statement just a little bit. So I think our statement, if it wasn't, should have been, if you're going to do really large desal, you should be doing it at Harbor Island.
Yeah.
So listen, we rely on the city of Corpus Christi, who is the water provider for the region, to solve the local kind of close-in regional water issues. What NRA is doing, though, is trying to solve a much bigger picture, and it was Charles Perry, who's one of the state senators, has this grand vision of desal plants up and down the coast and a pipeline of water pipelines of water flowing everywhere that doesn't have water.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah,
So,
we're not talking about just in this region or
and
this area.
And so NRA has bought into that vision that Charles Perry was espousing. The state has put some money behind creation of new water sources. So NRA is thinking big, and we have always thought that Harbor Island was the right place to locate a big desal plant because you can stick the straws, for lack of a better word, right? You can put these miles long pipelines out into the Gulf and intake your water from the Gulf and put your brine back out into the Gulf. If you talk to the folks over at HRI, right, they'll tell you, the solution for pollution is dilution, right? Yeah. So the more water you have circulating and flowing through there and the faster it interchanges, the better off you are for that brine. So for large scale desal, and certainly since I took over a couple of years ago, my focus has been on putting that discharge offshore. We had a permit for inshore discharge. We're not using it. We're getting a new permit to go offshore for that plant. And then NRA will get to use those permits. Like I said, they're thinking big. Desal plants are, by their nature and always have been, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And so the water out of there is best if it's blended into a system that's already got a large water supply, right? And then those rates are blended rates, not $10, $12, $14 a thousand, which is what will likely come out of that plant, is what the NRA is saying. We're not going to have any role beyond the permitting and leasing the land to the NRA.
Which you have done. You have leased the land.
That lease is executed. It's got a financial incentive in there for both the NRA and the city of Corpus Christi to hopefully work together. So hopefully that just becomes another arrow in the quiver for city of Corpus Christi in their water supply battle, right?
Which the city is doing now, looking at options. We've got to have options. It can't be tied to one thing. And the city, I think, has recognized that and is really hitting hard on what's the quickest, most efficient option, what's the long-term option, and that's going to continue to be a conversation.
And we've tried to make it very clear, Harbor Island was never intended to be competition for the city. Harbor Island is a different animal. We hope the city will view it as an opportunity to take water off of it because it's sitting right in our backyard. But that's between them and the NRA. They may not view it as economical or efficient for the way they want to supply water. That's not something that we're going to get involved in. We are not a water provider. I don't have a water department. Oddly enough, though, in my 2 years, I've spent as much time working on water and talking about water as I have just about anything else. So,
you and every official in Corpus Christi.
Well, what's the first thing I asked you when I came in here, right? What is it going to rain?
Is it? Yeah, that's right. We want to know. That's what everybody wants to know.
Yeah.
Let me switch over to something that I think everybody in Corpus Christi understands, and just a couple of more questions here, and that would be the topic of traffic. You are investing as a port millions in infrastructure projects. I think the Sam Rankin Street reconstruction project, if I was looking at the agenda right, it has nearly $7 million in mobility funding.
It does.
That's coming. Why is that a priority for the port?
So it's one. So, and that's a great project. I'm glad you highlighted that because that project's being done in cooperation with the city. So the city put a certain portion that would be used for utility reconstruction in the last bond, which got approved, and so the city will be participating in that way. We went and got grant funding from TxDOT, which will provide a certain amount of that, and then we'll be putting some of our own money in on that. Sam Rankin, though, is a main feeder out of the port, kind of parallel to Port Avenue, but all the way out to I-37. And if you've driven through that area, which a lot of it's been under the bridge, the new bridge, as it's been constructed, it's in terrible shape. And so no one uses it, and certainly no truck or someone exiting the port is going to use it in the shape that it's in. And so we take our role as builder and maintainer of infrastructure extremely serious. And so my focus the last 2 years has been how do we get back on track for maintenance, because those 40 years where we kind of moved the same volume every single year, we weren't making a lot of money either. And so it was hard to scrap together enough money to do dock maintenance and road maintenance and warehouse maintenance and all of those things. The tremendous increase in volume with crude oil flowing out of the Permian and Cheniere coming here and doing liquefied natural gas and other customers also coming here. SDI, who came here for cheap gas, right, up in Senton, moving steel products. All of that has increased the tariffs that we've collected. All of that now gives us the opportunity to reinvest back into our infrastructure. And so our building is actually sitting on one of the original docks that was, so it's been here almost 100 years.
Wow.
Well, I need all of my docks to last like that, and I need that dock to last.
and that means maintenance.
For a while as well.
Upgrades.
And so that means maintenance. And so one of the first things we did a couple of years ago, we put together what we're calling our 30-year dock plan. And so it's got a scheduled, programmatic maintenance schedule for every dock that's in the port that's under our control. And so we actually approved construction improvements on a couple of those docks in Tuesday's commission meeting as well. We also created an asset management department who will manage the asset and manage the maintenance schedule for those assets and make sure this is actually getting done properly. It's a big task. It's, in my opinion, I mean, if I got to some sort of moniker for my time here as CEO, I would hope someone will say I was the infrastructure
CEO. And that's a big deal.
I want to make sure we're set up. We're never going to be in a better position financially than we are now to get done the things that we need to do to set this port up for long-term success. And so I want to make sure while I'm here that we don't miss that opportunity, because time, as you know, time moves by fast.
It does. It does. You take advantage of it. The other traffic thing is traffic seems to be increasing, at least every time I take it, on the Joe Fulton corridor. Are you guys paying attention to that at all?
We do. So we do traffic mobility studies on the Joe Fulton corridor. At some point, that road, which was constructed by us but is available for public use, at some point that road's going to have to be widened, particularly as Corpus Christi Polymers comes online. They've got a big plant over on that side. Vulcan Materials, because of some issues in Mexico, have been pretty slow the last couple of years, but they'll come back to full capacity at some point and move a lot of trucks through there. And then you have folks who use it to transit from Portland to the Calallen area as well. It's arguably more convenient just because you end up all the way up almost in Calallen. And so, we keep an eye on that. We have done several projects, including projects that were funded by TxDOT, Texas DOT, to add traffic lights along there. Also add turning lanes, add a queuing lane for the ADM grain elevator, because back in the old days you used to end up literally with hundreds of trucks parked on the side of the road, taking up part of the lane of traffic there. So now they have their own lane with some bathroom facilities, and we're even working on further improvements there where it could be a truck queuing system, so they don't come and show up at the elevator to dump their grain until the elevator is ready to receive it. And then you don't have them queuing up like that. What we don't want to do is push that back to the farms, and now they're sitting over at the farms waiting to come over to the elevator. But we're trying to work through all of that using technology.
Well, so good news for those of you who regularly take the Joe Fulton corridor, that somebody's paying attention to what's going on out there. You mentioned earlier the Ortiz Center, that great facility that sits right next to your building. I don't think a lot of folks have realized that's been under renovation for a while, hasn't it? What's going on there?
So that was one of our original warehouses. So that building is 100 years old. It was a cotton warehouse. And if you go in and you go into particularly in the big ballroom, you can still see the exposed walls and beams and those kind of things. It was turned into a convention center 25, 30 years ago. And so, and really nothing had been done on it since then. So it was time for kind of a refresh, an update, wall panels, carpet, all those kind of things, but also kind of a better way of doing things. And so, for example, we've moved all the HVAC up into the roof, which has created a tremendous amount of space, particularly back in the kitchen area. We have another entire area the size of the ballroom in the back, but never could use it for a ballroom, for example, because there was no kitchen space to have two events at the same time, so why bother? We might be able to change some of that and look at some other things. The other thing we've done is reconfigured the commission room. We used to take down and put up and take down the dais and where staff sits and all of those seats every month when we had a commission meeting. And they take a lot of beating when you're taking them down and putting them back up. And so we've now got an area where they'll sit permanently, and then you can just close that area off when you have other events. And so should be a nice refresh. We're going to add some modern conveniences if you've watched City Council. I love the new voting software
up on the screen where you see everybody how they voted.
You see it on the screen and see exactly how everyone voted. So we're going to do something like that as well.
Well, look forward to that, and look forward to that
And
reopening.
like I mentioned it earlier, it should be back open in January. Ready to host events.
Okay, so we'll look forward to that. Final question here, again, just something I picked up from the agenda that I was going through earlier. You're leaning on temp agencies right now. Do you have any kind of a workforce shortage problem at the port, or what's that about?
So we're budgeted for about 300 heads. We regularly run about 30 to 40 heads short on full employment.
Okay.
And so we fill those for folks who have immediate needs with temp agencies. Not a great number. I mean, our employee services number is somewhere around 30 million per year. Temporary services costs are about $350,000 a year. So it's it truly is temporary. We don't hire folks on a temporary basis and then keep them out there for 12 months, for example. So it really is just to fill gaps if you have a critical job that someone leaves and you're not quite ready to hire someone else yet, or can't find someone else. But we always, I mean, folks can check our website. There's 7 jobs posted out there right now.
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you're looking for a job, sounds like you may want to check out the port.
Absolutely.
You guys are always hiring, and
Absolutely.
You're hiring from the folks who live and work here in our community as well. So good stuff. We're going to have to call it there. Kent Britton, CEO of the Port of Corpus Christi, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate the information, and we look forward to continuing to do this in the months and in the years ahead.
Fantastic.
All right.
Good to see you, Mike.
Thank you guys for watching on 3 News Plus.